Welcome to episode 3 of Getting to Know the Mistress. Today we're going to be talking about clutches. In drag racing terms, the clutch is where it's all at. How you get down the track, how you leave the line, and how your bike performs is heavily dependent upon your setup and how close you have it to perfect. The main difference between a stock V-rod clutch and a destroyer clutch is that large cone that you can see, there you go, which extends the housing out to take the lock-up hat. Here we have a standard destroyer clutch. The bottom part, the gears and that big black ring, that is the clutch hub. It's pretty much standard and follows pretty much what a stock road bike would have. This one is actually a billet aftermarket version, which is a little bit stronger than the cast Harley item. On top is the lock-up hat. Now, if you look closely, you can see that there's arms with little bolts and nuts and weights on them. The idea of this is they progressively apply pressure as the bike goes down the track to lock that clutch solid so it drives, won't slip, and gives the bike its absolute maximum chance of getting the power from the motor to the back wheel. This one is, as I mentioned, the stock destroyer setup. It's hydraulically activated via a clutch lever. You can see there the line and the actuator on the outside of the stock housing. The stock destroyer clutch is adjustable in 3 ways. You can adjust the spring pressure, you can adjust the arm weights, and just down there under those there's another little spring which you can adjust. That's why they call clutch a black science or a black art. Lots of different ways you can get to the same result as somebody else and still be doing it entirely different. Now, if we compare the standard destroyer clutch cover and housing to what I have on my bike, you can see there's a marked difference. Same shape, except for the big round dome looks completely different, and it doesn't have the hydraulic actuator running up to a clutch lever. Let's get rid of that cover and I'll show you what the inside looks like. Having a look inside the stock housing, you can see the central hydraulic actuator which disengages or engages the clutch. If I move over to the one that's in my bike, all you can see is a bearing support and a little bit of high-speed grease. That's because the clutch in the Mistress is totally centrifugal. Looking again at a stock destroyer clutch with the lock-up hat on it, we'll just move on up to the clutch in my bike. You can see there a similar principle. It's still got arms with weights and washers on them. The biggest difference is it doesn't have a push rod. This clutch is effectively disengaged at all times until the motor creates enough RPM or enough centrifugal force to force these arms, just see if I can get my finger there, out onto the pressure plate. The blue part is the pressure plate. It pushes down out that way with centrifugal force as it spins and the motor spins up, and that applies pressure to the clutch plates, whereby the stock one is engaged all the time and you disengage it by hydraulically pushing that rod there via your clutch lever. My bike effectively doesn't have a clutch lever. Lots of bikes use these type of clutches, but we understand we was the first in Australia to run one, and definitely the first in Australia to win an event with one in the bike. The biggest advantage we've found is it just shocks the back wheel a little bit less than the standard lever, making the bike a little bit more consistent. I probably should have added that to tune the clutch that you can see there, you use the spring pressures and it's a combination of the spring pressure, RPM, and the weight on each of those arms, and that will determine at what point the clutch takes up. I'll launch the bike with a two-step on at around about 5,000 RPM. As soon as I take my finger off the button, the bike will launch through to about 8,500, 9,000 RPM. The clutch progressively takes up on its as the RPMs rise. It's very smooth, although you don't notice it because you're launching fairly hard anyway. But it does then, once it's all locked up at about 8,500, it won't unlock until I button off at the other end of the track, and then the bike just freewheels from there. Complicated, but once you get your head around it, it's nearly set and forget on my bike, whereas some other bikes you'd probably be fiddling with it a little bit more often. So there you go, a short introduction on the clutch in my bike compared to a stock bike. Really, without getting too technical, there's not too much more I can tell you. Thanks again for watching, and look forward to the next episode.